Hi, Algebra 1. We are talking about different lessons today. Today we are going to work on Lesson 1.1. We're talking about variables. Most of you from pre-algebra should know what a variable is. Our essential question, can you simplify numerical expressions and evaluate algebraic expressions? So we're going to talk about the difference of all these things, and let's start with a few definitions. The first definition we're going to put our attention to is a variable. You probably studied a little bit of variables. Sometimes you'll see them as x's or y's or even a's, b's, or c's. The value of a variable, they'll usually tell you, starting off in Algebra 1, x is equal to 5, and then they'll say, so what is 2x? So you would take 2 and multiply it by x. This is called a variable expression, so 2x would be a variable expression. A numerical expression is really just numbers. 2 plus 5 equals 7. And the value of the expression is the answer. So let's get working on a couple different things. The first thing we're going to talk about is the substitution principle. The substitution principle is just really, if you think about it, when you replace something else for something else. If you have a substitute teacher, there's a teacher in for your teacher that day. An expression may be replaced by another expression that has the same value. So let's go back to where I talked about this right here. If x is equal to 5, and I tell you to find 2x, well, if I take 2 and I replace the x with the variable, or with the numerical value of 5, because they are equal, anytime we replace a letter, a variable, with a number, we're going to go ahead and put it in parentheses. So this is just saying 2 times 5, so the answer would be 10. And that's what we mean by substitution. All right, so we're going to simplify a couple of these. You may remember order of operations. Order of operations is PEMDAS, and I talk a lot about why PEMDAS is wrong. Does anyone know why PEMDAS is wrong? We do need to multiply and divide from left to right and add and subtract from left to right. So we are always going to do PEMDAS correctly. So the first is parentheses. Yes, there are parentheses right here. So let's do the parentheses first. 12 plus, 4 divided by 2 is 2. There are no exponents. There's no multiplication anymore. We already did the division because it was in parentheses. And now we can go ahead and use addition. 12 plus 2 is 14. And it looks like we solved that. And the last one is subtraction. All right, so let's focus on our PEMDAS again. First place we're going to start is in parentheses. There are parentheses on letter B. 12 divided by, 4 plus 2 is 6, because we're going to do the parentheses first. There are no exponents. There is no multiplication. There is division. 12 divided by 6 is 2. Moving on. Now we have two sets of parentheses. We're actually going to do both sets of parentheses first. 3 plus 2 is inside parentheses. That is 5. And notice I rewrite everything else the same. 6 minus 1 is 5. So now we have a simple question of 5 divided by 5, which is equal to 1. All right, what about this one? This one, we do have parentheses again. 12 times, get used to the St. Andrew's cross no longer being shown. Typically, they'll show it as a dot for multiplication. Well, 12 minus 2 inside parentheses is 10, and I know that 12 times 10 is 120. So those weren't very difficult, but let's see if we start evaluating expressions, if this gets a little bit more difficult. M is equal to 1 and N is equal to 2. So it says let's evaluate the expression when M is equal to 1 and N is equal to 2. In this case, we do not have an M, so I'm going to replace this whole thing with 2 plus 4, because N is equal to 2. Looking at PEMDAS, what do we have to do first? Good. 2 plus 4 inside the parentheses is 6, and now we can multiply to be 18. All right, the last question we're going to do is we are going to evaluate the area of a rectangle. Remember that the area of a rectangle is length times width. If the length is 22, I'm going to replace any variable. When I replace it with numbers, I'm going to put it in a parenthesis. And the width is 4. So if the length is 22 and the width is 4, the area of my rectangle will be 88. And they didn't tell us what it is, so I usually just call it units squared to be right on. If you would like to practice some of the problems that we will be doing in class, you can try these now. Just push pause on your video now. So thank you so much. Great job.